Okay, Greg has gone, but he will be back in a sec once he has got his Wi-Fi sorted out. And hello, hi B, hi everybody who's joining. I was saying we're going to be talking about non-surgical hair restoration, which methods are worth considering, which ones Greg thinks have any legs, because he is all about evidence-based medicines. So we're going to be looking at everything from the drug-based options through needle-based therapies, moving on to low-level light, nutritional supplements, you name it. He will be able to talk about it. And here he is again. Right. Let's get him back in here and we can get going. And if you've got any questions, just shove them in as we go along and I'll try and pick up as many as we can. Ah, right, there you are. That looks better.
Yeah, I've got you now. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Somebody moved the router from the room, which was frustrating, but I've moved
you got it more or less. Okay, sit on the router, then you'll be all right. So, I mean, you spend your time doing hair restoration surgery, and I mean, you're back practicing now, aren't you? In fact, it looks like you're already in the middle of something.
Down. I am actually in the middle of doing a hair transplant.
Oh,
but
God, hope we better just keep this a bit, bit brief.
No, there are aspects, I work with a big team, and whilst I do all the surgical steps, there are aspects of a hair transplant procedure that can be delegated. So, for instance, placing of the grafts, my team are placing grafts now that I've extracted. So yes, we shut down over the lockdown period, but when fertility treatments were sanctioned by the government, we thought that was a reasonable green light for us to start doing hair transplants again.
Fantastic. Okay, and you are running the hair agenda at the FACE conference in October. So do you want to say very briefly about what we're going to be seeing on that?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've been running the hair agenda for the last couple of years. It's been really popular. We have it on the afternoon of Saturday, I think, is it the 18th of October? And there are two sessions. So one session is going to be on genetic testing and cell-based therapies. We'll talk a bit more about that later on.
Great.
And the other is going to be on PRP for hair loss, which is always a really popular session. It's really topical. People are really excited about hearing what works, what doesn't.
Fantastic. And before we start, I mean, it's almost too obvious to say, but I think it needs saying, just why hair restoration is such a popular thing, why it's so sought after.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, first of all, we need to remember that hair loss has so many causes. I think today we're really going to focus on male pattern hair loss. We might touch a little bit on female pattern hair loss. They are very, very different entities. But, a huge number of people suffer with hair loss. The figures are something like 50% of men by the time they're 50 and similar figures in women. And it's not just hair loss, but scalp disorders. Everybody has dandruff from time to time or an itchy scalp or shedding of hair periodically. It's a really, really important subject. And it's remarkable that it's so under-researched, so under-studied, so under-published, and people don't talk about it a lot. And that's really true for men. I mean, it's part of the whole man-up culture. If you're losing your hair, you don't cry about it.
Yeah, and you don't really share about it either, do you? But I know you're seeing a lot of impetus towards doing something about it coming from the selfie culture, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I think more and more, particularly in the younger age group, guys who are spending a lot of time in front of a camera and focusing on their hairline and the celebrity culture of the perfect male abs, the perfect male hairline. I think the older patients, less so. But, I think for most guys, if you had a choice of having hair or not having it, you choose to have it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. And okay, so moving on to all the stuff. I mean, can we get the bad news out of the way first, which is that kind of most interventions for hair aren't evidence-based, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that doesn't mean that they won't work in some people, and we'll come to the different non-surgical options when we're talking later on. But for me to say to somebody that there is real, solid, reproducible, research-based evidence, unfortunately, it's a bit of a desert. There are two pharmacological treatments that are licensed for hair loss in the UK, which people may or may not know about. Topical Minoxidil, which is marketed under the brand name Regain. That's over the counter, available at most reasonable sized chemists. You put it on twice a day for men, and it works in the majority of men. And there's a female formulation as well. And then there is actually a prescription drug called finasteride that's licensed for men. And that's effective in about 90% of men to slow down or stop hair loss. But it does come with a side effect profile like many medications. And for men, this is quite emotive because about 2% of men will have problems with erections, and another 2% of men might have problems with libido or sex drive. And that puts a lot of people off.
That's the one thing that sort of matters even more than losing your hair, isn't it? I think for men. Yeah.
Well, there are studies that suggest that men would rather not have sex and have their hair.
Wow. Okay.
Extreme.
That's
but
that
unfortunately for women, I mean, female pattern hair loss is a very, very different entity from male pattern hair loss, which is straightforward and genetic and very easily recognized. But unfortunately, there are no licensed drugs for hair loss in women, apart from topical minoxidil. There are lots of drugs that can be used off license that are effective, but are not licensed.
Yeah.
And that's it for
evidence-based.
For evidence-based, and that's it really for licensed pharmacological treatment.
Okay, right. So moving on to the next lot. I mean, the ones that are really popular at the moment are the needle-based therapies, aren't they? Like mesotherapy, toxin in the hair, but particularly PRP. Could you start with PRP?
Yeah, well, before we even get there, there's also just plain microneedling, and there's an increasing trend for just like how people use home derma rollers to microneedle their face to supposedly stimulate collagen production and improve skin tightness. There is a vogue for microneedling the scalp. And we're not certain how that may or may not work. So then you have to think, well, if that does work in some people, maybe all of the needle-based therapies are just working because you are stimulating the scalp. But yeah, so PRP, very, very popular. Everybody is putting PRP into scalps. But PRP, as you know, we know, is that's like saying, you know, I got sick. You really don't know what the PRP is, what device you're using, what are the platelet concentrations, what depth are you using, what depth you're injecting at. So PRP is not a single entity, and it works for some practitioners, and it doesn't work for some practitioners. It works in some people, and again, there isn't really solid, good quality research-based evidence. There are lots and lots, I mean, hundreds, thousands of papers, but not really great quality ones. And if you do a really in-depth study of the papers that have been published, it comes up short.
Okay, thank you. And mesotherapy, probably even less in the way of papers, studies, because mesotherapy is even more not just one thing. It's kind of any old cocktail of ingredients that are put in to stimulate the scalp.
Yeah, I think mesotherapy is a little bit more popular in some European countries.
Okay.
It is offered by practitioners here, and there are a number of commercial products. There are also some practitioners will create their bespoke products with different ingredients. But you know, it tends to be a little vague what people inject often, and it's difficult to measure efficacy.
Okay, and again, yeah, with mesotherapy, it's an awful lot of injections, isn't it? So would you say that might again be the stimulation just of the needles rather than?
You know, it's sad for something that's so prevalent. We just don't really know. Okay. You know, I know a couple aesthetic practitioners that I really trust, and I listen to what they say, and they think it works in their hands. but most of the time it's very difficult to objectively measure the results. So patients say, "Oh, I think my hair is better. I think it feels thicker, or
Yeah,
it looks shinier." The trouble with any intervention with hair is the hair itself is dead. Yep.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
when somebody says to me, "Oh, I had a treatment 3 weeks ago and my hair is so much better," that's
Yeah,
nonsense.
it's going to be months and months, isn't it?
Years, in
Yeah.
fact, if your hair is really long,
Okay.
because
Mm.
the hair grows at a centimeter a month, and so it takes a really, really long time for any intervention to grow out within a hair strand, and for you to see the benefit in terms of increasing the hair diameter, or if you are trying to grow more hair.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And what about Botox injected in the scalp? I mean,
That's a really interesting one.
Because I've
I don't
heard
know.
about it for, for reducing the oiliness, but not
Yeah,
for
well,
stimulating.
I've not heard about it for reducing oiliness, but for perimenopausal women who have extreme scalp sweating, so what's
Okay.
called scalp hyperhidrosis, that can be a very effective treatment. And I have colleagues who do it for that indication, who say that their female patients report to them that they think their hair quality is improving. So again, not studied. There are a couple of papers out there about it. So I think watch this space.
Okay. And is there something around the injections of any sort stimulating the blood supply? And could you just talk
Yeah,
about whether that's
that's
important?
a common concept, that if you can increase the blood supply, you'll improve the hair quality or amount. Again, not a lot of evidence for it. Interestingly, Minoxidil, which is one of the licensed treatments for male and female pattern hair loss, we don't exactly know how it works, but we do know that it does increase blood supply. So maybe there's something in it.
Okay. Just checking down the questions. There's something, but one for which we'll come on to something later. Right. So what about low-level light therapy? What are your feelings on that?
So I think there's a lot of logic to low-level light therapy,
Okay.
because we know that in the labs, in Petri dishes,
Yeah.
certain wavelengths of light will stimulate the hair follicle. But in the scalp, the light has to penetrate the skin to the depth that's required, where it's going to influence the hair cells. And that's the more hair you have, potentially the less light's going to get down. We don't know exactly the right wavelength of light, or the how frequently to use it, or the duration of use. But there are a number of home devices. It used to be, you could go into a salon 3 times a week, which is very antisocial to have to do that. But there are home devices, caps and combs that you can use. And there is logic. We also, in fact, know that so the accepted light is in the red light wavelength range. We know that blue light does work, but blue light doesn't penetrate the skin. So that it's unlikely that's going to be clinically relevant.
And the difficulty with the home use things, because if you're wearing it like a hairband, I mean, presumably you need to have the hair out of the way, otherwise it's not going to get anywhere near.
Yeah, so
onto the skin,
it's
into
one of the advantages of the Hair Max devices, so the laser band and the laser comb, is that they have teeth on the device, so they separate the hairs and allow the light to get down to the scalp where it's needed. So if you've got very thick hair, then a laser home device, a cap's probably not going to be effective, because the light won't get down to where it's needed. And if you've lost an awful lot of hair, then it might be too late for that sort of therapeutic intervention. But I do talk to my patients about it, for sure.
Okay, because what is the point at which you can still catch a follicle and kind of re-stimulate and wake it up, and at what point is it too late?
Good question. We don't actually know that for sure. We think once it's become a vellus hair, so a very, very miniaturized, that it's unlikely to be re-stimulated. But there's a new kid on the block with hair interventions in the States. This is called Exosomes. We had a speaker come for the first time to talk about ExoFlow Exosomes, which is one of the brands. He spoke at the British Association of Hair Restoration Surgery conference at the end of February this year. It was really exciting, and some of the pictures suggested that there could be hair growth stimulation areas that are just about bald, and that would turn on its head our current thinking of when how deteriorated a hair can be before it is no longer rejuvenatable.
Goodness, that's amazing. So are these exosomes, are they particular delivery vesicles?
Yeah, so they're delivering essentially growth factors, you know, not dissimilar to what we think is happening with platelets.
Yeah.
But it's an off-the-shelf product.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that one for the future. Now, somebody was asking, have you any views on erbium laser used on the hair for stimulating, on the head for stimulating hair?
No experience with it.
Okay, right. Low-level laser, that's that one. So what about what about nutritional supplements? Can we talk about your views on nutritional supplements?
Have you ever been to Holland & Barrett and walked down the hair aisle?
Yes. Okay. Let's start with them, and also all the sort of things that beauty writers like to write about. Like me, we'll say, you know, biotin is good, or I don't know what. But you know, okay. What's your views? Come on.
Yeah, I don't know. I you know, for a FACE conference, I think it was in 2017, maybe, I did a presentation on the evidence behind nutritional supplements, and there just isn't any. Okay. Lots and lots of advertising. The bottles all say scientifically proven, but when you dig down into it, there isn't a lot of proper research evidence. Now, if you have a nutritional deficiency, then of course that can affect your hair, particularly in women. And we know that iron is important for hair growth. We know zinc's important, vitamin D. Supplementation, you know, determining whether or not you have any deficiencies is important, and then supplementing them. And, you know, there's no harm, you know, people take multivitamins. I don't think there's any harm in a multivitamin. But are any of these specific nutritional supplements for hair going to be effective? Try it. If it works for you, great.
Yes, there's one supplement which I know, which is popular among my middle-aged friends. And when their husbands take it, the hair does grow faster. It doesn't grow back, but it's certainly what hair there is grows faster. That's one called Lumity. I don't know if you know of that one. Hair growth is not one of its stated benefits, but anecdotally, I've heard this so often now.
There is wishful thinking. There's anecdote. And then there are proper research studies. Another very popular one is Babyscale.
Okay, right. I'll put mine back in the anecdote pile. But what about now? The one I hear about from hairdressers who, okay, they're selling it, but the supplement that gets most recommended in that industry is Babyscale. Babyscale Professional.
Yeah. So Babyscale comes in two formulations: Babyscale and Babyscale Professional. The Professional has a higher concentration of what is supposedly the active ingredient, which is aminomar, and it's a marine protein. The company are a little secretive about what it is. Again, when somebody's secretive about the ingredient, it worries me a bit. But they've spent a lot of money, and they've got a huge celebrity endorsement, who I'm told are not paid to endorse a product. So again, it's something I mentioned. If I'm pushed and somebody says, okay, tell me what, if I'm going to spend my money on a nutritional supplement, I'll probably mention Babyscale.
Okay. From my anecdotal stories around that, you've got to take it for months. Like, you've got to commit to like 6 months before judging whether it's working or not, because like you say, it'll take a long time to do its stimulating work. And then anyway,
well, yeah, if you think that the hair grows 1 centimeter a month, after 6 months you're going to have 6 centimeters of hair. Now, if you have a very short hairstyle, then, and in men, for instance, then they may be seeing the benefit of 6 centimeters of growth. But if your hair is a lot longer than that, then it's going to take a while before the whole of your hair benefits from any intervention.
Sure. Okay.
And really, a lot of these things, you then have to be committing to taking them for life. A lot of them will work while you're using it, and then if you stop using it, if it's working for you, then it's not going to work anymore.
Like collagen supplements, which some people like for stimulating hair. I feel you're going to say the same thing on that too, aren't you?
Show me the evidence.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And one last thing on hair stimulation. London Beauty Queen Dom is asking, what does castor oil or coconut oil work for hair growth? I think we're going to get a short answer on that, Dom.
I think, in fact, if you look at my Twitter account, I tweeted about castor oil. It was in the papers last week, I think, or the week before, purporting to increase hair growth. And I made a pretty strong comment about that.
Comment, did you?
So castor oil may make your hair look great, but it's not going to affect the growth. And that's the same for coconut oil. You know, there are lots of, and that's, you know, we're not going to talk today about shampoos and conditioners. There are shampoos such as like Alpacin that
I wanted to ask you about things like that and the ingredients they put in, like caffeine.
Yeah, so again, caffeine in the lab it stimulates hair follicle growth. We know that, but the amount of caffeine you're going to have to deliver through the skin to do anything for hair growth in real life is not. I personally don't think it's achievable. In fact, the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK required Alpacin to remove some of its advertising to do with suggesting that it improved hair growth. But what I was going to say about conditioners and shampoos is, you know, you got to work with what you have, and so Alpacin, for instance, it tends to dry out the hair a little bit, so it may add more volume. If you've got dry hair, you may want to add something that gives it shine, and the same thing with how often, you know, people ask me all the time, how often should I shampoo my hair or wash my hair? Well, it's whatever works for you, whatever product works for you, but don't be fooled by expensive products. Just because it's more expensive doesn't mean that they're going to work.
Okay, thank you. Right, now what about stem cells? Stem cell injections, somebody's asking, or stem cell anything?
Yeah, I think I think there's several areas where hair loss treatment is going to go in the future. One of them is I think in the growth factor area. So I think in the future, rather than injecting PRP, which just has a whole bunch of growth factors, we'll have specific synthetic growth factors, and you'll have some sort of test which will say what you're missing and what cocktail of growth factors you should have injected and how often, and that's where growth factors I think will go, and I think exosomes and PRP, you know, are going to head down that direction. And then in terms of stem cells, yeah, I think there's definite promise for this. So for anybody who's interested, go to the website www.hairclone.me. That's hairclone.me. That's a really exciting concept where so the company has established the first hair bank in the world. So this is banking stem cells, freezing them.
Wow.
A hair bank. It's like banking umbilical cord blood or embryos or sperm. You know, so you're going to bank your hair stem cells. Well, actually, they're dermal papilla cells, and in the future we'll be able to thaw them, expand them, re-inject them. And this is, you know, we're on the verge of doing this now in human patients.
Wow.
And the idea there is that the diameter of a hair is determined by the population, the number of these dermal papilla cells. So a weakened hair that doesn't have a very good diameter is because the population is decreased. So what we think is if we re-inject a solution of these dermal papilla cells, they will migrate to the existing hair follicles, repopulate them, and you'll grow a stronger hair. This is a slightly different concept from in the past, where we thought we could grow new hair follicles. Now what we're talking about is rejuvenating hair follicles that have deteriorated, and that will be applicable to both men and women. The earlier you start, perhaps the more effective it'll be. You might need to repeat the process, but the most exciting thing for male pattern hair loss, which we know is dependent on a hormone called dihydrotestosterone affecting those hairs that are susceptible to it, is that if we take these cells that are not from an area that's not DHT sensitive, and they migrate to hair follicles that were DHT sensitive and repopulate them, then that hair is no longer going to be DHT sensitive. And so it is possibly the holy grail for hair loss, in that you will be curing male pattern hair loss by doing this.
That's phenomenal.
It's really, really exciting. Watch his space. Hairclone.me.
Hairclone.me, and I'll put this on the face IGTV afterwards, and I'll put that in the notes. for
And
people who are
also,
asking.
they will be talking at the in the genetic testing and cell-based therapies session at FACE on the 18th of October.
Okay,
I'm sure that room's going to be packed out.
they're going to be mobbed. But so Greg, how do you get these stem cells? Are they taken from the dermis rather than from the scalp?
So there's a technique of hair transplant, donor hair harvesting called follicular unit excision, where you drill out individual groupings of hairs or individual hairs. That's what we'll be doing.
Okay.
And we'll be harvesting about 100 hairs, is what's required to bank.
And you can get them from an area of the scalp so maybe some areas are affected by DHT and some aren't.
So it would typically taken from the back of the head.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that sounds amazing. Tricho test was something I know we were going to talk about.
Yeah, so this is really, really new in the UK. It's from a company called Fagron. And they launched in Spain and Italy at the back end of last year, launched in the UK, I think it was January or February. And this is about personalized medicine. So it's a saliva test. You do a swab in your mouth, and then you get a report from the company that suggests which treatments are going to work. And this is really exciting because we know that minoxidil does not work in some people for a couple of reasons, but one of which, minoxidil has to be converted to an active metabolite. You have to have enzymes that can do that. Some people, the enzymes don't work. And this tricho test looks at an individual's genes, their gene profile, and can predict whether or not minoxidil will work. Can also predict whether or not finasteride will work. But they go a lot further. They talk about a lot of enzyme systems for nutritional purposes. One of them, we talked about collagen. If your ability to synthesize collagen isn't working well, then perhaps supplementing, for instance, with cysteine, or there are various other things. And it's quite a comprehensive genetic test. And the reports will then suggest a personalized topical preparation that you would use. And, it's at this point in time, I can't endorse it because I don't think that the evidence, again, is there.
No, for sure. But
it's really, really exciting.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I met them earlier in the year, and yeah, it's just that idea that you could work out which avenues were not going to be worth pursuing. At least that would save you a lot of time if you're exploring non-surgical options.
A lot of time, a lot of frustration, a lot of false hope. So I tell people when I prescribe finasteride to most men who've got male pattern hair loss, and I tell them, it's not going to work in 10% of people, and we've never really understood why that is so. And now, potentially, we will understand because of their genetic makeup and the enzymes they have that may or may not be working. And in fact, in the case of finasteride, it may be that the enzyme's working too well. But it's really, really exciting. And they'll also be talking at the FACE conference.
Okay, terrific. I'm just typing in a note saying tricho test for people who didn't catch that one. But again, I'll put that in the notes after I've loaded this up. I think, Greg, we can probably let you get back to your patient in a couple of minutes. Are there any new drugs in development that you haven't mentioned already that would be worth mentioning before we finish?
There are a whole number of drugs, and as you know, it takes a long time for traditional processes to work. It's one of the exciting things about hair clone is it's explained on the website, but it's using a non-traditional way of doing studies. But drugs take a long time to come to market. There are lots of interesting drugs. I don't know if you've ever talked about the drugs for eyelash growth that are available.
Yes, bimatoprost. I'm on it the whole time.
Yeah. So that prostaglandins can affect hair growth. Yeah. In fact, there's some suggestion that it's useful for eyebrows as well.
Yes,
but we know it does work for eyelashes, and there are prostaglandins. There are drugs that prostaglandins affect the hair on the scalp as well. So there are drugs there. I would suggest to anybody who's really interested in science, there's a website called folliclethought.com.
Follicle Thought?
Yep. It's an amazing, and you can follow them on Twitter as well. It's an amazing source of information about what's new, what's in development, what studies are you know, what phase they're at, what's coming to market. So there's lots there about the drugs in development and about the various stem cell companies around the world working on hair, because it's a multi-billion pound industry, hair loss and the non-surgical hair restoration options.
Yeah, phenomenal. Greg, thank you so much for your time, for all your expertise, and particularly for breaking off when you're in the middle of a transplant. So I think
I'm going to head back now.
We'll let you get back to your patient, and thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much for having me. I look forward to seeing everybody at the FACE conference.
Look forward to it. Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye.